This reading is from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda and is entitled, Why Do Devotees Fall? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. An endlessly fascinating question is, why did Judas fall after receiving the extraordinary blessing of being accepted into the inner circle of Jesus Christ's disciples? For Judas was one of the 12 apostles. Yet he betrayed Jesus and earned for himself the opprobrium of Christendom for all futurity for his sin. We find Judas reprimanding Jesus just days before that betrayal. Jesus, aware that his disciples would soon be facing, with his death, the supreme tragedy of their lives, allowed Mary to express her devotion by anointing his feet with costly ointment. This act of wanton waste, as Judas saw it, awakened indignation in that disciple. The Bible says, Judas says, "Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor?" And the Bible continues, "This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and kept the purse, and bare what was put therein." Then said Jesus, "Let her alone, for against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always." Doubt not, this Swamiji continues, doubt not the power of delusion. Respect it, indeed fear it, though not in the sense of cowering before it. For, as Yogananda said, one is not safe until he attains Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the state of final union with God. Judas, through attachment to money, opened his consciousness to subtle influences which may be called satanic, that drew his thoughts toward other related attitudes, the importance of worldly power, for instance, and of worldly influence. The Bhagavad Gita gives a graphic explanation of how easily the mind can be drawn downward once it begins to feed on wrong attitudes. In the 2nd chapter, Sri Krishna states, "If one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire. Desire, impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger there arises infatuation, the delusion that one object alone is worth clinging to the exclusion of all others. From infatuation ensues forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the self follows degeneration of the discriminative faculty. And when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life." At the first thought of delusion, Paramhansa Yogananda said, that is the time to stop it. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Hello, everyone. I wish I could say so nice to see you, but I could say so nice to see the participants on this Zoom call. Hopefully you'll all be able to have a little time to hang out afterwards so that we can say hello to you. This is a really serious topic, and there's some really important phrases that Swamiji says. One is, and Master, that last sentence of the time to catch delusion, a delusive thought, is when it begins. And also that we're not safe until we're in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That means we can attain what we, for ourselves in our life, would be the highest to reach Samadhi, And then to find out there's a higher stage of samadhi that we actually have to release so that, or to enter, so that we're not at that ability to fall even from such a high state. And who knows, perhaps Judas was in that high state, but not yet nirvikalpa when he fell. Swamiji said that Judas had this attachment to money, and it was those thoughts that he had around that began his decline. And of course he was a thief too. He had a taking energy. But really for each one of us, all it takes is one thought that fits perfectly in our psychology to draw us down. I remember a time when probably about 11 or 12 years ago, we were in Gurgaon, and I had some incident happened, and my mind kind of tweaked around the incident, just like, And I started my thinking going down a certain line. I'm not going to even try to remember what the thinking was because it had so much power over me. And I could feel every time I thought that thought, it pulled me down, almost without my ability in the moment or without my will pulling it down. I could feel the force of something pulling it down. Obviously, Master talks a lot about Satan, a satanic pull, this ability for this outside force, you could call it evil, to pull us away from God, to pull us into delusion that says this planet we're on is the reality, the skin we have on this body makes us this human being made out of flesh, and forget the thought that, we're souls here on the planet learning lessons and we'll go back into the astral or beyond after this life. Instead, there's just this very worldly consciousness that is like a blanket that can come over us and just feel like, this thought just takes us completely down. And it's very difficult to fight. And it's a test. It's a spiritual test that can come to us. And the only advantage I can say about that spiritual test is once we do overcome it, then we're stronger for it. But I was in that test for, I think, was it a couple months or was it even 3? It was for a few months, and I really relied on Dharmarajan because the thing is, I knew something was pulling my energy down. I knew it was difficult for me to pull the energy up myself, despite the fact of doing as much as I could, all of our tools, to try and bring my energy back up. And this wrong thinking seed in my mind, I had to really rely on Dharmarajan, and every day that this came up to me, I think there were some days when I wasn't thinking of it, I would say, remind me what was actually, what the actual situation was and not what my mind made it out to be. I remember it was my perception of a certain situation. And I had to ask him, remind me every time I needed it, remind me what the truth was. Remind me what the truth was. And I really had to hold on to that truth. And then I was able to get over it. But it was serious and made me really respect the power of delusion and also to understand each one of us could have our moment when this type of thing happens. Not that each one of us will, but could. And had I been a more emotionally mature devotee at the time, then probably I would have not, this wouldn't have even been a problem. But I had an emotional issue around that problem. And so that was part of my downfall. And so anyway, I'm very grateful I was able to overcome that. And unfortunately, being on this path, I've seen many people, if you want to say, fall because of their attitude. And it's a sad thing. You know, there's stories of Master crying about a devotee that had left the path. And he said, you know, it's going to be a long time before that person comes back. Or in one case, I remember that person was never on this path. But still, it's going to take a long time because that person gave in to that satanic pull and gave into it and got drawn off the path. They were going to, not that the guru would lose sight of them, but it meant it was going to take a long time before they come back. And what do we have? We have the promise of Kriya Yoga that we could become Jivan Muktas in this life. But with that promise comes great challenge, comes great tests that happen to us, because it takes a great amount of energy, willpower, dedication, and not just dedication, but just a drive to find God. And that drive can have the equal and opposite test to try and break that drive. And what is it? It's a play of God, isn't it? Because God made us, God threw us into delusion, and then God says, hey, come back, but I'm going to make it really hard. I'm going to, give you this, you know how the army goes through things where they go under a post and up and over a post and all that kind of, we're going to have that. You're going to have that in all these lives. And not only that, you're going to collect karma, and you have to let go of all the karma before you can ever even, rise again and come back to God. So that's the game. And, Master said those who find Kriya Yoga have very, 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 very good karma. But it doesn't mean we can't fall. And these little tests, one attitude I have seen in some people who have had a test and have even fallen, if you want to call it that, has been the attitude of I'm right. And that attitude of I'm right blocks intuition from the divine to come to us. It blocks guidance from those around us who are more wise than us. It makes us block, and it makes us turn our back on God's wisdom. And by turning our back on that wisdom and thinking I'm right, it really emphasizes the egoic I. And by doing that, we can really go off. I'm not going to go into too many details, but for instance, one friend was in charge of one of the Ananda businesses, and even, in my opinion, started the position in really kind of a wrong way. Someone was leaving the position, and they just said, I could do it. I would do a great job. And, that person had a lot of confidence and a lot of magnetism and did do actually a great job. But there was a problem. There was this unfortunately being really nasty to people. So they did the job, but they did the job by stomping on others. And to get their way, they really were not nice to other people. And ultimately, after a while, this attitude caught up with the person, and then kind of karma said, no more. You don't get your way anymore. And so there was this thought of, I'm right. And so I'm not going to listen to anybody else around me. I'm not going to do suggestions, although, this person took suggestions too. They weren't that unreasonable, but there was just this I'm right attitude that I've found that some people seem like really humble devotees, and then you put them in a leadership position, and somehow they just become really domineering. And it's something to be really careful about when Ananda puts someone in a leadership role, to make sure that person has the maturity and the right attitude to be able to do that role without becoming a mini tyrant. And so this person ended up getting fired because, first got demoted. People were nice. You have such wonderful skills in this area. How about, we're going to bring this person in to be in charge now, but why don't you focus on this other area? So that was a demotion, and that person knew it was a demotion, and the attitude of I'm right continued, meaning now it became you're wrong and I'm right. And the person was completely unaware they had this attitude, completely unaware, because they just felt, I'm so right. But one clue could have been, one, people complaining about the person's behavior. Why not listen? Two, being demoted. There's a clue. Something happened. Your friends around you didn't fire you. They just demoted you to try and help you. Number three, then the person was fired. Because this horrible negative attitude was facing everybody around them afterwards, just like there was no other option. And then that person fell even more. That person became so negative. And I had known that person since they had begun the path. And so they became so negative that they ended up just, unfortunately, they couldn't find a job at the place where they were with Ananda. And so then ended up getting training and getting some job outside of Ananda, but still lived there. This person had a spouse that was serving at Ananda and doing just fine. And so this person, with this attitude, I ended up not being able to even be around this person anymore because of the attitude. But this person then, we were in India at the time when after this event happened. I was actually working with that person for a while before we moved to India. And so we moved to India, and so we would just come back once a year. So once a year, I would see the same attitude in this person. Now, I have to say, the fact that the person didn't leave was, a positive thing for that person, but that attitude was there. And but then, after a number of years, I came back and that person was serving. And it was like, okay, that person is now beginning to serve regularly. And then the next year, serving even in a bigger way, meaning with a positive attitude and even more. So what happened was, maybe that person fell for a while, but then had the humility to keep trying. And we can suffer failure on all levels, and it can be very humiliating. It can be very, we have a choice when we're humiliated. That choice is keep moving forward on the path no matter what, and say, Master, I am yours, you are mine, and I know you're right, and everything comes from God. That's hard when you think I'm right, but everything comes from God, And so I'm going to keep moving forward no matter how it looks to other people, because when we fall and make huge mistakes and it's humiliating, one of the worries, one of the thoughts in your mind is, what will it look like to other people? And so the tendency is to go and hide, you know? And this person went and did other things outside of Ananda and was not around much at first. And so we go away, we lick our wounds, but had the courage to move beyond that humility and say, look, I'm still a child of God. I may have made a mistake, I'm still a child of God. And if anyone was judgmental of that person, Swamiji always showed he kept the door open, even for people who would leave Ananda in a blaze of, I could say glory, but in a blaze of negativity. There's always that door open, that look, if Master is your guru, where else do you have to go? Now, yes, there's other Kriya Yoga paths. Fine, if that's your path, that's your path. But if this is your path through Swami Kriyanandaji, we're all kind of stuck, aren't we? Because we've given our heart and mind and soul on all levels for this path. We know it's ours. There's a knowing through intuition. This is my path. And so when that humility comes, we can turn our backs on the path. We can say those people are horrible, those people are awful. How could they be that way? You know, basically, I didn't get what I wanted. How can they be that way? I'm turning my back, I'm going away, which is really actually a childish reaction that we all have the ability to do. You don't have to be 4 to act that way. And so I wanted to tell another story of someone where it's not such a happy ending. This person was working very, very closely with Swamiji, had been a part of Ananda long before I ever came and got to know this person, and was doing very important things with Swamiji, with a lot of people at Ananda, other colonies too, far-reaching, big aura, magnetic. And, you know, I don't know, after my own being on the path for, this happened before India. So anyway, maybe after being on the path 10 years or something, or 11 or 12, I don't remember what it was. But this person had been a big part in a lot of people's lives. It turned out that he was doing some really sneaky things that were not dharmic on a few different levels. And when it came out, and it was a big deal what had happened, a really big deal. And hence, a huge humiliation for this person, because this person had such a reputation of being a certain way, which implied a certain spiritual attainment or a spiritual way of being, which was obviously a veneer. Although, of course, people are great souls no matter what. But in the public eye, the public Ananda eye, this person looked so great, and yet something was really going on wrong behind the scenes. So this person was then found out, and quite a few people were quite horrified and probably very judgmental of this person. But most likely not super confrontational if they weren't directly involved. Those who were directly involved were more confrontational about it, just to get the person to turn themselves around, turn their minds around. I remember one Acharya who's, very, very wise and just a wonderful soul. She had long, long talks to try and help him through this. And yet he left. And he left in a big way. And then not only that, Swamiji, who was in Italy at the time, invited this person to come to Ananda, Italy and start anew. So despite having done the worst possible thing, despite, bringing all this judgment on themselves, despite really acting adharmically and obviously creating a lot of bad karma, Swamiji held the door open because he knew there's no other place for this person. This person is our own. This person is a child of Master. This person is a child of Ananda. And he wanted to help him. Just being near Swamiji could make your energy rise. And so by just having the guy near him, he knew there was a chance that this person could start having their energy rise rather than the satanic pull that happened. First, that drew them into such a icky thing, but then that continuous, Satan really wins when that satanic thought continues over time. And the right thing to do is to talk to people you feel are wiser than you to give you good advice, wiser and spiritual on the path, and give you advice to help pull you out. That's the purpose of community. Unfortunately for this person, I think the door is still open at Ananda. This person could come back anytime they wanted. And yes, when they came back, some people would, who weren't around at the time would probably find out what happened through some gossip. But really, those of us who have been on the path a long time know what it takes to go through humiliating circumstances and still stand tall. Know what it takes to go through a deep satanic pull and come out the other side into the light, because this is not an easy path. And God made this game extra challenging. There's these, if you play a video game, you can put it on the easy setting, or you can put it on the extra hard setting. This is beyond the extra hard setting. And so the tests that come at first it is on the easy setting. Just small tests come and, oh, I overcame that test. Aren't I a strong devotee? But then you just never know when, okay, really, you want all your karma in this lifetime. You want to become a Jivang Mukta? Great, okay. I've got some karma for you to burn through. And so then the karma comes. And we think, no, I got Kriya Yoga initiation so my life would be easier, so that life would be more blissful and living in God's light. And it is all of that. And still, there are these tests that shake our world. No matter how many years you've been on the path, your world can get shaken. And so these are things that happen. But I wanted to end with a very hopeful thing. Because we can think, oh, we're doomed, that kind of thing. But we're not, because the Bhagavad Gita and Master and Swamiji and our gurus, let's see, I put it in. They offer us a promise, and that is no true spiritual effort is ever wasted. That means when we are, it means when we're on the path, when we've learned, and the Bhagavad Gita kind of clarifies, when we've learned a true spiritual teaching, not one by a charlatan, but a true spiritual meditation technique, then none of that is ever wasted. So suppose we kind of go out in a blaze of glory and forget those people and I'm never going to come back. And what did God do for me? God didn't save me from this. And so, but meanwhile, we spent 20 years on the path and made a lot of spiritual progress through Kriya Yoga. And it's not wasted. So I just wanted to read this. So this is chapter 2, stanza 40. On the path of spiritual action, no effort is wasted. And this is from Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's a literal translation, which is, in this path of action, there is no loss of the unfinished effort for realization, nor is there creation of opposite effects. Even a tiny bit of this real religion protects one from the great fear of birth and death. And so when we're on this path, a seed is planted inside of us, and spiritual action with a true spiritual technique is not dualistic, meaning we are only creating positive karma with what we're doing or no karma. So then the poetic rendition is, "O thou spiritual aspirant, enter the path of spiritual action. Then for thee will never exist waste of any holy effort. For the least attempt thou didst make to place thyself even in the very beginning of the spiritual path will be to thy benefit. O devotee, it is better to enter the spiritual path, even if thou art at a standstill and maketh no further progress. Thou must realize poignantly it is more profitable and protecting to be in this spiritual path than to be exposed to the shafts of misery by remaining on the open fields of evil. Unlike certain actions, spiritual action does not spume forth contrary consequences. Even a tiny divine drop of this realization will relieve one from the dire disease of ignorance, resulting in the travails of births and deaths." So, even if we've fallen, even if we've left the spiritual path in a blaze of glory, we have this promise from God that it's never been lost. And why are we here now? If we would have been, on the spiritual path in other lifetimes, which Master says we have been, especially if we want Kriya Yoga now, it means we did not free ourselves yet. So here we are again. And because of that promise, we are back again. And we have the benefit of all the past tries that we've had on the spiritual path. Now, for some, the thought of ending the path and then having to come back again can make your blood go cold. But we have no control over that. Really, we don't know how many more lifetimes we actually have. We can strive to become Jivan Muktas, that's what Master said, and so we should in our minds believe that with all of our effort, all of our spiritual effort, and not doubt that, because there's also the grace of the Guru there. But all the other past lives where we didn't quite make it, here we are. We have another opportunity. And so if you find your mind is going to a doubt, is going through a difficult time, is leading you into some kind of a feeling of offness, reach out. Reach out to those who are more wise than you. Open yourself up for help. Ask for help. And you'll get it. You'll get it, and it will pull you out of this delusion, and you'll be able to say, I'm stronger for going through it, and allow you to continue on the spiritual path. None of us want to leave on the deepest level, even if we feel resentment or whatever it is that's bothering us. We don't want to leave. So when those thoughts come, those negative thoughts, try with all our hearts to turn those thoughts up, up, up. That's our job as spiritual devotees. Okay, God bless you.